Hello everyone and welcome to Little C's podcast. We Little C's are a non-profit organization that was established in 2024 and is operated solely by high school students. So let's get started by sending over to May.
The Weight of Silence. In the dim-lit corridors of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Isabel Moretti, a renowned curator in her late 40s, paced restlessly between exhibits. She had worked there for over 20 years, meticulously curating priceless collections. But recently, she had found herself drifting into kind of emotional paralysis. The museum, its stone walls, its hushed rooms, once filled her with a sense of purpose. Now, it felt more like a mausoleum for things that no longer mattered. It wasn't the artifacts or the paintings that were at fault. Isabel had always prided herself on her intellect, her ability to discern patterns, histories, and untold stories hidden in plain sight. Yet lately, her mind had become a labyrinth of indecision, haunted by an unresolved trauma she could never fully place. She had spent a lifetime interpreting the stories of others, but never her own. One evening, as she was about to lock up for the night, Isabel noticed something strange, a package, unmarked, placed on her desk. A note inside read simply, "The truth lies beneath the surface." It wasn't the first time she had received such cryptic messages. Over the past few weeks, similar notes had appeared, each one seemingly more urgent than the last. But this one felt different. This time something stirred within her, a sense of recognition. She knew this message was not random. It was a summons. Isabel had spent her entire career interpreting the art of the past, unlocking the mysteries of lost civilizations, translating ancient scripts, reconstructing fragmented histories. But now, as she stood in front of the large, imposing doors of the museum's basement archive, she found herself questioning everything she had ever believed. Something in the note had resonated with her on a primal level. She had seen the phrase "beneath the surface" before. Not in a scholarly text, but in the margins of a letter her mother had written decades ago. Her mother, an elusive woman who had always seemed more like a figment of Isabel's imagination than a living person, had died when Isabel was young. Isabel's memories of her were fragmented, disjointed conversations, half-formed images. But one thing had always been certain. Her mother had never told her the whole truth about their family's past. Isabel had been raised on stories of historical significance, on the triumphs and tragedies of great figures, but never on the intimate personal history that shaped her own life. With trembling hands, Isabel unlocked the archive door and descended into the darkness of the museum's basement. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her as she pulled open a drawer filled with old papers. It was there, buried beneath stacks of documents, that she found it, a collection of old letters, yellowed with age. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. It was her mother's. The first letter was dated years before Isabel was born, written to a man named Thomas Moretti, a name Isabel had never heard before. As she read through the letters, it became clear. Her mother's silence had not been born of neglect. It had been a deliberate act to protect Isabel from truth too dangerous to be known. Thomas Moretti was Isabel's biological father, but not just any man. He was a historian, a controversial figure whose research into secret societies had made him enemies both inside and outside of academic circles. Isabel's heart raced as she pieced together the fragments of her mother's secret life. Her father's research had touched on a hidden chapter of history, a lost civilization whose influence had rippled through centuries of politics, art, and power. And as the letters revealed, Thomas Moretti had uncovered something so profound that it had cost him his life. The last letter, written in a hurried scrawl, hinted at something far darker. Her father had discovered a hidden manuscript, a text that contained knowledge capable of altering the course of history. But the manuscript had vanished, without a trace after his mysterious disappearance. As Isabel reached the final page, her breath caught in her throat. The manuscript had been hidden in the museum. She was certain of it now. The strange occurrences, the cryptic messages, it all made sense. Someone, perhaps even the institution she worked for, had known about the manuscript and had kept it buried, even at the cost of her family's legacy. The weight of this revelation was unbearable. Isabel had spent her life building a career on preserving history, and yet her own personal history had been erased, buried beneath the very walls of the museum she now called home. In the weeks that followed, Isabel couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The museum, once her sanctuary, now felt like a place of surveillance and danger. She had taken her mother's letters to her most trusted colleague, David, hoping for some clarity, but his response was chilling. There are things about this institution, Isabella, things that cannot be questioned. Some stories, some truths, are better left in the past. Isabel realized she was at a crossroads. The manuscript, the truth, was within her grasp, but at what cost? Her career, her safety, even her sanity. All of it was hanging by a thread. The very institution she had devoted her life to preserving could be implicated in a conspiracy that spanned decades, one that reached into the very fabric of history itself. In a final act of defiance, Isabel chose to leave the museum. The weight of her family's secret, the weight of her silence, was too great. She took the letters, packed them into a bag, and disappeared into the night. The truth would not be preserved by walls or institutions. It would be preserved into the spaces between words, and the places where history remained unwritten. Isabel understood, finally, that silence was not a refuge. It was a prison, and now she was ready to break free.
Thank you so much for listening all the way through. We hope you found this episode helpful and enjoyable. If you did, be sure to tune in for next one. Until then, take care and see you soon.